Hello, Oliver. Well, here we go. I've been, I don't know, putting off and waiting to do these recorded videos, but here I am, the guy behind all the writing. And so the first one I want to go over with you and try to give a little more explanation is task 4B, the political socialization tree. So for the political socialization tree, as I described before, it's a self-actualization activity, inviting the students to be a little more reflective on their political stance, or well, more importantly, like what's shaped their political stance. Like, where do they lean on the spectrum? We range from liberal to conservative, and ask them to initially reflect on what are the different values that might underscore and might be part of their budding or their growing sense of their political selves. As you mentioned in your comments, this is timely given the political atmosphere, but in teaching the course, throughout our history in this country, it's always been, there have always been these times where the political arena is very, very heated and debated. We just finished up the school year talking about the different landmark Supreme Court cases, and several of them were from the Vietnam era, right? And that was a very politically charged time as well. So this activity is one that it isn't originally mine, but it's something I do with fidelity throughout the years as I've taught the government course, because I do believe it gives the opportunity for students to really get to know themselves. And we do it early in the school year, so that they can begin to understand and maybe have a more personal response to the different political issues and ideas and ideologies and public policy that the government is putting out. And so it hopefully grounds their understanding of those issues in a more personal way, and helps them understand more about themselves. And even if they don't consider themselves a liberal or a conservative, or don't really know what that means, they can understand and begin to reflect on the values that ground those ideologies. And so that's why I believe this is an important activity for the students to do. This year, I added a component where we go over a reflective piece, and so it's almost like a guided meditation in some ways, where I ask them, I go through the different levels, right? The tree itself, this one here is a good example. She didn't go into a lot of detail, but in this example here, she talks about her, there's the upper leaves, the lower leaves, the trunk, the roots, and there's various questions in the handout that I provide that kind of asks them to reflect on, gives them a little more direction in their reflection when they're considering these different levels. Yes, and so as I go through that, I show them in the video, or I show them in the, I lead them in the meditation type activity in their notebooks, and I ask them to just kind of brainstorm and write down some ideas, so they have something to look at when they're actually putting together their political socialization tree. And so here's a more detailed example, right? And so this student obviously took the opportunity to delve in with a lot more detail than the previous one I just showed you. Something I like to share from here, where it gets them to start thinking about the language of, are you a liberal, a conservative, a moderate? And this student says that she describes herself as moderate, but also a liberal person. This is because I believe the government should help people who truly need it, like in things like healthcare or education, but not go beyond its power. I think everyone should have equal rights and opportunities, no matter what. This other student wanted to share the same level, right? But he identified his experience by saying, my parents aren't really political, but just them raising me with values such as being respectful and empathetic make me go to or relate more with liberals. I wouldn't consider myself one, but my values make me lean to it. And that one I think really captures kind of the motivation of, or the reasoning behind doing this activity. That even if students aren't comfortable with the terminology that we throw around in the course, they can connect to the values that they're growing up with, or that present in their lives, that they see around them, and able to make connections to the course content and what we're trying to learn in the different units and different activities, different lessons. So again, and then this student, you can see that this is a much more this is a very gifted and talented artistic student, and that's another value of this activity, is that it allows students to share their to share some of that. I've had comments on, I do different illustrated notes in different for different activities, and the students really gave me some feedback here as we wrap up the year, saying how they appreciate that they can tap into that artistic side while they're writing down and taking notes. And so this activity does a really good job of allowing them to, again, connect to these political ideologies, these ideas, these values. Gives them an outlet for them to be able to be a little more creative, to express themselves. Allows me to see a different side of them, right? Not just their writing and academic use of academic language and what we're trying to accomplish in our proficiency scales and what we're trying to get done through our learning targets, but also see that different side of them where they can express themselves a little more creatively. And so, as I mentioned in my write-up, this has impacted our classroom specifically, because I think it allows them to, again, connect their personal insights and experiences to what we're talking about, but also helps them, and we reference it often, that what's true for you isn't necessarily true for someone else, and they have a different experience and different values. And so what they have experienced obviously is different, and that comes out differently when we're having discussions. And so if they can learn that in our classroom, even though we all kind of come from the same economic background, same ethnicity, varied genders, but similar in geographically and from our area and our cultural experiences. But if they can begin to see some of the nuanced differences within our community, then hopefully as they continue their education and or go into the trades or the military, or just go out there and get jobs, and they can see that people have those different values shape the way that they see the political sphere, or experience the political sphere. And so that's definitely a positive outcome of this particular activity. This activity, I think, I have adapted it a bit. I wouldn't change too much of it. It's something, again, that I do regularly. This year I did add the meditative piece because I wanted to be sure that they gave it some time to really reflect on it and make some of those connections. I do know that it's a little more effective in the AP classroom than it is in my regular education, my at-level classes. But I'll continue to do it and take that time and allow them to reflect on the questions that guide them as they're going through that activity. And again, I'll continue to use this every year. I like to save some of their work because it's so creative, right? As I demonstrated with you, and some of them are just pretty plain, right? They're not the most creative students, but I mean, they're still getting the important parts of it. Yeah, and so just for an idea, right, that the different levels, right, the trunk is kind of their ethnic background, religious background. Branches are their political stance, right? The terminology of liberal, conservative. On the bottom is kind of the values. The upper leaves are like their talents and their skills, the things that people see. So it's a very comprehensive, reflective piece, and I think really fits well with this self-actualization component of this particular task.